you find to be their strongest issue right now? Not that they've convinced you, right? But you disagree with them, but you find it the most difficult to debate against because they are closest to having merit.
I
Is there any?
yeah, I'm sorry. I try. I really can argue both sides of any issue that I talk about. I really do try to understand the other side. Conservatives are not on planet Earth right now.
In this video, David Pakman and Destiny have a conversation about conservatives. Specifically, David Pakman and Destiny discuss right-wing political arguments. As is common when Republicans are mentioned, Destiny goes nuts, and even David Pakman is stunned. With that, let's watch Destiny make such unhinged comments that even woke David Pakman is left in shock.
Much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus.
It's a 180. It really is. Stephen, couple other things. When it comes to the strength of right-wing arguments you disagree with, what do you find to be their strongest issue right now? Not that they've convinced you, right? But you disagree with them, but you find it the most difficult to debate against because they are closest to having merit. Is there any?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I try. I really can argue both sides of any issue that I talk about. I really do try to understand the other side. Conservatives are not on planet Earth right now. They just aren't. When it comes to the Trump stuff, when your argument is that Trump has psychic declassification powers, or when your argument is that the president should be immune from all civil and criminal liability, and the only way to hold him responsible is through impeachment, even though 10 plus Republican senators refused to impeach him on statutory constitutional grounds because they said we can't impeach him. He's already out of office. You just can't have it all of these ways. When conservatives are making arguments for hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, saying, well, we've got this retrospective study, sample size equals 10.
Here we go with the conservative derangement syndrome. This, 1 minute portion of this clip that I've played you should leave no doubt in your mind that Destiny is incapable of having a good faith debate with anyone from the right, because as he says, the Republicans aren't on planet Earth right now. I wish he'd give some examples. Maybe he does later in the video. And I don't know what he's talking about when he says Trump has, what did he say, magic declassification powers? Well, first of all, every sitting president has declassification powers, so I'm not sure what he's talking about. Now, when presidents are out of office, they can't declassify documents, but I still just don't really understand what he's talking about. And I guess this isn't a good commentary section because he said something about impeaching Donald Trump, but they wouldn't do it because he's already out of office. Well, yeah, he's out of office. You can't impeach a president that's not the sitting president. I guess I need to hear more, and hopefully there's a little more context. Let's get back to the video.
Equals 10, from Indonesia that says that ivermectin is really good. But then when DeSantis in Florida wants to ban trans treatment, he says, well, actually, we only are going to accept prospective, randomized controlled trial, double-blind studies for trans children. It's like, oh, wait, you do know what good medical research looks like. Interesting. It's really, really, really hard to debate conservatives in any type of fact-based world. Almost all of that is rhetorical maneuvering because we completely.
So there's no particular issue where you find yourself saying, hey, I really disagree that we should have a flat tax, for example, but they're pretty good at arguing for it, or there's nothing like that.
I would say the weakest side of the left right now is because we've gotten so detached from having conservatives in our circles, we run way too far with arguments sometimes, especially social stuff. So for instance, I might sound bad. As soon as I hear somebody use the word anti-racist, I know we're probably never going to agree on anything. When I hear the term white supremacy or white supremacist society or settler colonialism or Western colonialism,
if you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
I know that whatever you're about to say next about is some wild stuff. You're about to tell me like 52 reasons why black people can never be racist against white people, or why it's actually okay to have like anti-white graffiti on a school because of historic reasons related to blah, 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 blah. Like it's always going to be some, or why being on time or being able to do math on a computer is actually a white person's thing. And that's racist to assume that black people can show up on time to places. Like, I know it's going to be some crazy shit. That I would say that on the social stuff in certain areas, this is, I mentioned earlier, like school administrators, I think sometimes runs really far and people get really wacky there.
But
the
it
grand
sounds
scheme of
like
all the things
there's not
affecting
any
us, yeah.
big picture economic perspective where you're like, the left is just totally wrong on this when it comes to housing or tax rates or things like that.
I mean, there are things that they're wrong on, but conservatives don't even make any of those arguments. So, for instance, I'm a really big fan of building more houses. I think rent control is a garbage policy. I think that affordable housing for homeless people, I think, is a garbage policy. We just make more houses. You'll
So he's saying that Republicans are all idiots because ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were thrown out as possible treatments during the pandemic. To be clear, I don't know if there's merit to either of them having positive effects in treating what we were up against during the pandemic. However, as is usually the case, Destiny's argument is flawed. So let's take ivermectin. Billions of people across the world have been treated with ivermectin for a variety of things. So, Destiny, let me ask you this. Wouldn't a retrospective study at the time that all of this was going on and we were trying to understand how to treat this very infective disease that was going around, wouldn't a retrospective study of billions of people taking the drug, while not ideal, be as good, if not better than, the very limited studies that were required of Pfizer and Moderna's drugs during the pandemic because they were being fast-tracked and were given clearance to bypass years and countless steps of the drug approval process? Not to mention, the companies wouldn't be held liable for any adverse events. So they pretty much took away all of the consequences. So taking into consideration these factors, the consequences that most concern pharmaceutical companies were taken out of the equation. And those are the guardrails that keep pharmaceutical companies in line. And finally, I'll just mention that it wasn't just random people off the streets. These were medical doctors that were suggesting hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin would have a positive effect on the virus that we're talking about. And then you make a terrible false comparison when you say that Ron DeSantis says he'll only accept studies around transgender people and transitioning that were randomized prospective trials. That's because there wasn't a need to rush these trials as there was during the time of the pandemic. So all he was asking was for them to go through the process that every company's had to go through for I don't know how many years. The only reason trans advocates wouldn't like that is because they know that a study of that type would be impossible because they'd never be able to meet their endpoints. It's a pseudoscience. It's a fake treatment invented to make people a lot of money, specifically physicians and psychiatrists. But to give credit where credit is due, he is right that there's no talking with people that talk about anti-racist and white supremacy stuff. So that's the first cogent point I've heard him make in 10 videos. So good for you, Destiny. Let's get back to the video.
get housing to be more affordable. But conservatives don't talk about that. Conservatives will say things like, well, I think housing would be more affordable if we cut all immigration. So immigrants aren't buying up all the houses. Or I think that Chinese people are buying too many houses, or hedge funds are buying up all the houses, and that's why we can't afford them. So they're not even like making the good arguments or the strong arguments to support whatever position they have, in my opinion. Conservatives don't have an economic platform right now, right? Do they?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
No, I mean, I think it's like they're still vaguely against taxes in some theoretical framework, but it's like it's not even really coming up. It's just all obstructionism and opposition.
Yeah.
Hey, last thing I want to talk about. You've started to participate in some in-person canvassing efforts. This isn't the first election that you're doing it. You started doing it previously. You're doing it now. I'm going to try to get in and participate in some of them as well. I'm in touch with some of the folks you're working with. Talk to me about that. I mean, is this just as simple as, hey, let's get off our computers and go knock on some doors? Is it that simple, or is there more to it?
Well, that simple in terms of what I tell people to do, or from my side of things?
From your side of things.
Well, from my side of things, there's a lot going on. Right now, I'm working with an organization. We hire out staff, we get volunteers. What you're basically doing is you're trying to coordinate for what we just did in Ohio and Cincinnati. You want to.
Again, maybe I'm just not smart enough, but everything you described with regards to housing, such as if we have a completely open border and tens of millions of people are coming to our country every year, it doesn't matter how many houses we build. We'll be in a shortage again immediately. So to suggest that the right doesn't have a policy on that, that's the policy right there. We're trying to stop things before they start instead of putting Band-Aids on them after the left has messed things up. It's the same with big investment firms like BlackRock buying up all these residential properties. That is crushing for your average American working class residential buyer. So again, conservatives are saying something needs to be done about this problem, and it can't just go on forever. So I don't know how those aren't policies. Again, the right's policies target the root of problems, whereas the left likes to say things that make you feel good, but they never really do anything. They make things worse. Just take a look at California. Anyway, we want to know what you think. Am I crazy? Did Destiny make some really great points in that video? Or is he just completely Republican or conservative deranged? I would argue it's the latter. Anyway, that's it for this video. As always, we appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.